Hi Nisha,
Hi,
how are you?
very good. Happy to be back on our
Yes,
webinar sessions.
finally
And
we restarted.
yep, and that's it. It's a pleasure and honor to get back with Peter, the genius, the scientist, the photographer.
Yeah, today we have Peter as our main guest, and let's add Peter as well. Peter is waiting for us.
Yep,
Our favorite PT. We don't have to do a lot of introductions.
Thank you very much.
A lot of people already know uh, about you, PT. So, welcome to
Thank you
the
very much.
show.
Great. It's really great to be back.
Yeah,
I'm really
we
excited
have
by this.
we have decided to restart our sessions so that we can engage with our audience
yep.
and share our knowledge. So today, what is the plan, PT? What are you going to share with us?
So I'm going to talk about grizzly bears. So if you tell me when my screen is up, I will just start.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I live? That's okay.
Yes.
Well, good morning for me, because I'm in the Eastern United States, and I'm really excited that I'm setting off this new webinar, which is the Paws Trails have started. And our objectives in these webinars are to help you with your photographs. And particularly, we want to ask the question, how can you take more meaningful wildlife photographs? I actually think most people are really good at getting the basics right, but many of us want to just take it to the next level. And we think at Paws Trails that you can do this with good technique, an artistic viewpoint, and by storytelling. Storytelling is so important in your images. Your images have to capture the story. And how on earth do you do that when you're just taking one photograph in a short time period? And I think the answer comes to that really through the biology. So yes, technique is important. You can't take photographs like this red-eyed frog jumping through the air unless you understand the techniques and the advanced techniques to be able to do that. You also need to have an artistic viewpoint where you can see the way these flamingos were flying across the marsh, and so capture them in a way that is interesting and engaging for you to take place. But the thing that I'm really going to try and emphasize in these webinars is the importance of the biology. And that is the interconnectedness between the animals, between in this case, a leopard and its prey species, but also between the different animals themselves. And I believe that if you understand the natural history and the biology, then you can get some really good insights and so capture some exciting photographs. So today I'm going to talk specifically about grizzly bears. And the biology of grizzly bears is shaped totally by their hibernation. The fact that these grizzly bears spend 5, 6, 7 months in deep sleep changes their whole biology from month to month. So as I said, they go into hibernation for a period of 5 to 7 months. They do not eat, they do not drink, they do not urinate, they do not poop, they just lie there fast asleep. Their metabolism falls by 25%. They drop their body temperature and their heart rate falls from 55 beats a minute down to 9. Even during this period, the females give birth and even nurse the young babies during this period. So it's an incredible physiological trait, particularly for an animal of this size. And bears are, without question, the biggest animals to do it. Most animals weigh less than a kilogram. In fact, most of them weigh grams rather than even kilograms. And yet the bears go into this incredible hibernation period. Just before they go into hibernation, they exhibit what we call in science hyperphagia. This is an abnormal hunger where they become so hungry that they just want to eat non-stop. If any of you know a teenage son or a teenager, boy at this age, you will understand what this is about, because they just eat nonstop. And bears do exactly the same. They have to get the nutrients to more than double, to sometimes double their weight before they enter hibernation. So you can see bears going from after emergence to these huge, big bears that are just full of fat. Of course, brown bears, and brown bears include the grizzly bears and some of the other bears, but that includes the big bears. They go onto this feeding frenzy. And in Alaska and in Russia, you can go and see them feeding on the salmon, these nutrient-rich salmon as they're coming in, full of eggs, full of nutrients, and they can be eating large quantities of these every day. When they emerge in spring, it's a different situation. They've lost up to 40% of their body mass. They're really thin, and then their whole biology changes because they're just trying to wake up and they're trying to get out there to get food resources. And it's a very difficult time for the mother because they have babies at that stage. And any grizzly bear they come across will actually will kill. Any male grizzly bear may well kill the babies. So she has some problems to face. In Yellowstone, what the grizzlies do when they emerge from hibernation is they go off down to the rivers where the ice has been melting, and there they feed on the dead bison, the bison that have fallen through the ice into the rivers and drowned. And it's a protein-rich, if not a smelly-rich, protein source for them to get food. But I'm going to tell you about what happens on the Alaskan-Canada border. And I'm going to tell you what happens there because the bears there come down and eat a sedge called Lingbai sedge. It's a nutrient-rich grass that grows early in the season, and the sedge grows on the tidal flats in estuaries, and so the bears have to swim out to these estuaries to. Okay, just got a problem with my computer. There we go. These bears have to swim out to these flats, and once the tide is coming back in and the sedge grasses are totally covered, so they have to swim off them. And here's an example of the bears swimming back off a tidal flat. And this shows a photographic technique that I am personally very keen on, and that's getting really low in these situations so that you have a lot of the foreground out of focus, and even then you're still looking up into the face of the grizzly bear. I actually have my hand that's holding my Sony A1 and a 400mm lens actually touching the water level to get it as low as this, to get that effect. And one of the problems with grizzly bears is trying to be able to capture the eye. It's so difficult with all bear species to really capture the eye. So I'm putting the camera as low as I can, and then I manage to get the glint in the eye. Here's another one, bear swimming towards us. And as I said, they come down because it's a nutrient-rich area for them to catch the food.
You can hide that.
Oh, can I?
There is a button to hide.
Okay. I was afraid that was going to hide me as well. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. So when these bears come down, and these grasses start growing right at the beginning of spring, and they're nutrient rich. They're full of nitrogen and they're full of phosphorus, and the bears can at least maintain their body weight, if not add a bit. But it's the food that's available, and there isn't much food available in spring. And the really intriguing thing is these nutrients are growing in this grass, this sedge, which is in the estuary, and the grass obtain their nutrients from the salmon that died there the previous autumn. So when the salmon have run up the river and the bears are feeding on them, they then die, and the nutrients from the salmon wash down the river and make this grass really rich. So you can see here how that connectedness between the salmon, the nutrients, the grass, the bear biology starts to all come into play. this gives you an opportunity to really get in there and get some, what I think are some intriguing photographs of the bears that are just munching through as much as they can before the tide comes back up and swamps the grass again. There are other things you can do. You can look for artistic ways of doing it. So this is an intentional camera movement where I've actually taken the photograph but moved the camera in an emphasis to try and emphasize the grass that is there and the bears can get. So I'm looking to get a pattern in the grass and then still have it in the mouth of the grizzly bear. Now, the place I went is just on the Alaskan-British Columbian border, so just north of Prince Rupert. So I flew into Vancouver, and then I got another flight up to Prince Rupert, and then I got a float plane from Prince Rupert that took me into the Khutzeymateen, and that's the place where you can really see the grizzly bears. I met up with Ocean Light Adventures, and Jen and Chris run Ocean Light Adventures, and they have a really comfortable boat which they have moored just outside the park. So you come in the float plane, you get onto the boat, and then you can take a rubber inflatable Zodiac and go into the park and be able to photograph the grizzlies. You can see the grizzlies, but you can only enter the park in one of the boats. And there are only 2 boats allowed each at any one time into the sanctuary. And Chris, who is a phenomenal, so this is why I like going with these people, because Chris is just a phenomenal field guide. He understands the bear's behavior. He watches the bears. He can put you in a really good position to get a nice photograph, and yet he does it in a way that is sensitive to the bears, doesn't disturb the bears. And that is, I'm really, really impressed by that. So the Khutzeymateen itself is a grizzly bear sanctuary, and it was a sanctuary, as I said, which is basically a tidal saltwater fjord. So the saltwater comes in, and it's and the tide goes up and swamps these areas of sedge that are only available at low tide. There are about, they reckon, something like 50 bears in this area, which is 4,500 square kilometers. And it's interesting to me because it was established in 1994 when a group of biologists said, this is a very special and a very unique place for grizzly bears. And so we need to protect it. And they got full protection in 2008. Of course, it's the traditional territories of the First Nations people that live up there, the Metlakatla Nation, for example, and they still use it for fishing and for collecting salmon and things like this. And they sort of are the people who effectively police it. As I said, there are licenses for only 2 boats to enter the sanctuary at any one time, and Ocean Light are one of the people that has one of these licenses. So that means you can really get in there at the right time to be able to see it. And what is really nice is you're essentially alone and you can get in there and see some fantastic biology. When bears emerge from hibernation, it's also the mating season. So many of the bears that come down here will actually be looking for mates. The females are certainly looking for mates and the males are looking for opportunities. And you can see there the glacier sitting above the Khutzeymateen estuary, and that's the water that runs off, comes down through into the estuary there. The bears will meet and they will mate, and this pair of bears were mating on there until the tide came right up. And it wasn't until the tide was halfway up their bodies that they actually broke away and then swam away. But it's an interesting time of year because it is the mating season. So the males are looking for females and they're also watching other males. Because of the presence of the big males, it is very rare to see any babies there. The babies have just emerged and they avoid this because they know this is where the adult males are. And the adult males will kill the babies to try and bring the females back into estrus so they can mate with them. So the babies are never there. The young females and the first time they mate is when they're about 4.5 years old. They're very nervous when they get there, and they're sort of watching both the big males and the other mature females. And the mature females are ones that have already had young, and of course it takes them like 2 years to raise, and they're young to move away. So they're often they're like 6.5, 7.5 years old when they come back. There are, as I said, these young females are often hiding, being very careful. And here's another example where I've got my hand basically in the water to try and look up into it and get that foreground interesting, but blurred out. And I like that. I like that style. So the males will approach the females will reject males, will try and get away from specific males, and they actually, you can see them selectively saying, that's the male I'm going to go with. And we watched this female who was being chased by another male escape and then run off with this male, and they wander along the shoreline until they find somewhere suitable to where they can actually, where the mating can occur. And in this instance, these two went into a sort of dark cave where the mating occurred. And Chris was really good at getting us in a nice location where we didn't disturb the bears during this sort of mating process. Of course, when they're not eating grass, when the tide is up, when the sedges are covered, then you see the bears walking along the foreshore. They're looking for clams, crabs, anything they can get and dig up. And some of them are very good at hearing the clams and then digging them up. So that gives you an opportunity to try and get photographs which show a nice reflection. You can look for some bokeh effects. You can look to see how you can get some artistic shots take place. This is where I've got a very complicated foreground that I've put out of focus to try and capture the bear, and doing that in black and white. You can get backlit opportunities, and here's one bear swimming through the river, swimming across the estuary. There are also some colourful effects. So I spend a lot of time trying to catch the bear's eye. So trying to get yourself in a position where you can see the bear's eye, because they're nearly always looking down. And I was particularly keen to get some photographs of the bears with the lupins here. And here was the first shot I got where the bears started entering the lupins.
We have a question from Ellie PT.
Okay, yeah, I'll go.
Do their territories overlap, or each has its own territory?
So bears tend to have home ranges, and they tend to they're not really exclusive, so they're not territories. But when you have a situation with a high food source, such as this with the sedges or with the salmon, the territories all break down, and they get closer and closer. And while, bears are usually solitary, they have to come together, obviously when they're mating, but they have to come together, these food-rich areas. But when they move away from here, they will move off into different home ranges and tend to avoid each other when they do that. So it's not a strict territorial system like you see with birds or with lions and other carnivores. It's more of a home range. And with black bears at least, there's quite a lot of give and take where if there's a flush of food, that black bear will let other bears in to feed on it, and then they expect to get access if there's a flush on a neighboring bear. So it's a very complex but interesting system.
Okay.
There are other animals there, and the ones I really wanted to get photographs were these beautiful harlequin ducks. Fortunately, you can see pairs of them sitting around like this. Once again, here's that trying to get really low to get some interesting reflections and capture them. There's also, because it's very steep-sided fjord, there's very interesting reflections that come from the forest, the thick forest that's around the side. I mean, you can't walk. It's very steep and it's very thick vegetation. tree vegetation. So you would be struggling on hands and knees if you were to walk through it. But it gives these interesting reflections down in the water, such as these, such as you see here. That interesting light coming from above is shown here with this bald eagle, where you can see the light coming through the feathers, and yet the forest behind is very dark. So it's a very interesting light to really work with. So just in summary, I've introduced you to bears and hibernation. And my objective here was to say, think about bears, think about their biology, think about how the hibernation works and when's a good time to go and see them. Obviously, to go and see them on the salmon runs is fantastic. But, you know, there are also opportunities like here at Khutzeymateen during May and June when the bears first emerge. I went with Ocean Light Adventures, and I used a Sony A1 and a 400mm lens, I think totally while I was there. I did take a 7200 and another wide angle lens for some shots, but usually it was the 400mm lens that I used nearly all of the time. If you want to read or see some of these photographs again, you can go to our magazine, Paws Trails Aware, PT Aware magazine, where we did an issue on that a few months ago. And that's on our website on Paws Trails. So I just wanted to say, do visit our website. We're going to, we want to try and help you take more meaningful photographs. And Hermes and Nisha will be giving the next ones to help with you with your photography. Thank you.
Yeah, PT, I have a question. You were talking about the females selecting the male. They have specific, they opt certain males. So do you know what are the characters they look in a male when they are selecting a male?
No, I don't. And I thought I was looking for that when I was there, because this female, so you can see, when I was there, we were seeing, some days we were seeing 4 matings in a day. So this is quite a lot of bear mating going on. Some days you wouldn't see any, you might go 2 or 3 days, and maybe we just hit the hot spot. So, but it's quite interesting to see how the females really avoid some males, and I could not see what it was. I would have thought that, the bigger males, the more aggressive males would have been the successful ones, but that wasn't clear to me at all. There was a very famous bear there that had a large number of matings, and he was like the dominant male. So overall, I think the dominant male probably gets the most, but maybe this female knew who this male was. Maybe she mated with him before, so she knew that she had nice cups with him, so she went with him. But what makes a bear sexy? I don't know.
I think Ellie good, yeah.
We have another question from Ellie. Is hibernation affected by climate change, or it's noticed? Yeah.
Really good question, Ellie. Thank you very much. So when you look at the bear species, those that are tropical, and there are bear species, of course, 2 bear species in Asia, and there's one in South America as well. They don't hibernate in the very strict sense of the word, but they do go into periods when they go into sort of torpor and they slow down. So all bears show some degree of slowing down, but it's certainly more significant the further north you get. And there is concern about climate change and how climate change may result in bears emerging earlier, and they may be emerging at a time when they don't have access to the food that they really need. Similarly, they might be going in too late. They might be using up a lot of their resources, so they might not be able to sustain that through the hibernation period. So it is that is a big issue and an important issue. Thank you for raising that.
We have another question. Is the grizzly bear mortality increasing, and what are the biggest causes for that?
So I think with grizzly bears, there is variation in their mortality. In some areas of Canada and places, they're still hunted. They are fully protected in the United States, and they seem to be doing better because of that. I think many species, particularly species which need vast areas to be able to be where you can maintain a good population. I mean, this is 4,500 square kilometers. There's only 50 bears in it, and 50 bears is just about a number that you can sustain that population. And that's even with some logging going on. But I think habitat destruction is still the major issue for most species, and particularly these large-bodied individuals, large-bodied species like the grizzly bear. So I think human depredation is a problem still, but I also think that a lot of the issues are associated with habitat destruction.
Any suggestion or any solution you suggested for general public in case if they can get involved with any organizations or things which can keep people supporting the conservation side?
Well, there's, I mean, in Canada, it's very important that we keep these temperate rainforests, and these are stunningly beautiful. There have been issues with mining issues. There is some forestry that goes on, so deforestation must be done in a careful way, and it can't be mass extraction of timber. A selective extraction in a very careful way, I think, can work with bears. I think it's interesting that the bears were relatively relaxed around us, and that's because it's a protected area. That allowed us to get in. In many areas, you couldn't get anywhere near a grizzly bear because it would either be off before you got there, or the alternative is it would just attack you as soon as it sees you. So there are places in the Greater Yellowstone which people never go to. And one of my colleagues went in there and she saw a grizzly bear with a female. And as soon as she saw it, the grizzly bear turned and attacked her. And I said, well, what did you do wrong? And she said, it wasn't that we did anything wrong. It's just the grizzlies aren't used to seeing people there. And so their first reaction is to attack. I mean, she had a bear spray out. She managed to stop the charge with the bear spray. So the bear stopped at about 3 foot from her and then turned, which just reinforces that if you're going to be walking in grizzly country, you want the bear spray with you, right at hand, and it's no good having it in your backpack or somewhere if a grizzly is going to charge. Having said that, it's relatively rare.
Experience?
Yep, that was my question. Did you ever experienced anything aggressive?
So there was one instance where in the Khutzeymateen where Chris said, I think this bear's charged, so we'll just move back, and the bear did a false charge, but it was just sort of saying, I don't want you here, I want you to go away. So Chris handled that, I thought, really well. But in other places I've been and sitting taking photographs of bears, they come relatively close and they've been tolerant. And I think the image of the bear as being this really big aggressive thing is overstated in many respects. But you have to take care. You have to understand what the animals are doing. And that's what I want. I want people to understand the biology. I want them to be able to read the animals. And you guys may have had similar experiences with elephants. Some elephants are out to get you. In some countries like Botswana, they can be quite aggressive. While in somewhere like the Mara, you can be sitting there and they approach you and you have to more or less back off because they're so relaxed.
Yeah. And what is the normal lifespan of grizzly bears in the wild?
It must be. I knew the answer to this. I knew the answer of what the lifetime, but you're talking about 30 plus years. So they don't really get sexual maturity, the females, till the 4.5 years. Males don't stand any chance of getting a mating till they're 7 or 8. But there are many individuals make it into their 20s. And I'm sure there are examples of bears perhaps hitting a great old age. And I should look up this bear that they recorded there, because I believe he met a pretty good old age, and I've forgotten what that was.
Yeah, I remember reading something recently in a park over here regarding one big male and some negative information, but I can't recall it. It was supposed to be one of the biggest over here, or the oldest over here.
So when you think about animals like this, their generation time is, from when they produce a baby to when that baby produces a baby is like 15, 20 years. So any action in the environment that we take now is going to influence the next generation, but not for another 15 years, 20 years in the future.
Yeah.
So that's why conservation and certainly policies for land management are often very short-lived. It changes almost year by year. And yet we've got to be thinking about these long-lived animals like bears and, of course, elephants and other animals.
Yeah.
And do they run very fast?
Yes, they do.
They do. You can't even think about going up the tree.
You have to run faster than the other person.
Yeah, we have another question, Hermi.
No, that's Ellie was telling it's a very small genetic pool for 50 bears in 4,000 square kilometers.
Yep. Ellie's correct. Yes, it is. But they are connected. So we know that many of these bears, and particularly the males, will disperse and they will go to other areas. So it's very important for these animals to have connected populations, so that bears from other populations enter this one and these bears go to other populations to keep this genetic diversity. But there is an issue, and spirit bears, with very special bear species that lives just south of here, they have a very small genetic pool, and there is great concern over them at the moment, and quite right too.
Yeah.
And they don't have any natural enemies, right? As a threat.
No, they do. They do suffer from some infections like mange. I did some work on canine distemper in grizzly bears with a good friend of mine, Paul Cross, and they do get canine distemper and things. So and of course the cubs are very vulnerable, obviously, to other males, but just see these tiny cubs, and any other predator like wolves or something which compete with them could get them, if they get an opportunity, would kill them. So it's a very, so that first year, the survival of cubs is relatively low. Incidentally, you can see wolves there. I didn't see wolves. I think Chris just said, "Oh, there's a wolf over there," and by the time I turned around, it had gone again. So, but there are wolves in this area as well.
So in front of a pack of wolves, what is the survival chance for a grizzly, or it doesn't matter? No predators when it comes to these big guys.
So in this part of the world, when you're talking about deep forest, you're talking about small packs of wolves living along the coastal side. You're not talking about large numbers. It's nothing like you see in Yellowstone, where, we've had packs of 35 animals, and it's not like that. Here, it's more likely just to be a pair of wolves. And I think that I would generally say they're probably more frightened of the grizzly mother than anything, would tend to avoid them. But if there was a dead bear, they would definitely feed on it.
Okay.
Not a big issue.
Yeah, and apart from North America, can we see them anywhere else?
Well, we see the grizzlies are a subspecies of the brown bear, and the brown bear occurs in different forms. The grizzly here, and of course they're related to the brown bears that you see in Kamchatka and places like that. There are, and then And then the subspecies that's on the island is named
Kodiak Island.
Yeah, the Kodiak bears. Thanks, Nish. Yeah. So the brown bear has a fairly wide distribution, so you can see them in many places. And of course, black bears and other bears exist in other places. And I had a black bear last night turn up at my doorstep.
Yeah.
And he was literally 2 feet away. I opened the door and I said, perhaps you could move on. You've eaten all my bird food. And this bear is a really grumpy bear. He's already quite fat. And I had a pair of gloves with me, and I knocked him on the nose, and the bear totally ignored it. So I said, "You're going to have to move on, bear," and picked up a chair to sort of persuade him. And then he moved off. But then he went and destroyed part of my garage where I had some seed and some bird food, and then he did the biggest poo you can imagine straight outside. I love him. But I had a bear a couple of years ago called Bruno, who I was very fond of. And Bruno would come around and he'd just sort of sit there and sort of look at me and things. And I'd just chat away to him and he'd walk on round and go off. And sometimes he'd climb up one of the trees and just lie there and sleep. And he was a lovely bear, very relaxed bear. But I think he was shot by one of my neighbors, sadly.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
I think in my backyard we have 3 over here. I saw last time one with 2 cubs. This year I haven't seen any, but what I heard is in Prince George last year they killed the big number of black bears because they were coming. It's
Yeah,
such a small
I remember
place
last year you used to send photos very
videos.
frequently.
It's
Yeah.
1 feet, 2 feet, and I'm standing right in front of a mother with a mobile. Thankfully, I had one person standing very next to me, a tall fellow. So I think that kept the bear away. It was just sniffing around, but no bad incident. Just walked up.
It's a lovely experience.
It's amazing.
Special animals.
We have a comment from one of our audience. Very always fun listening to Dr. Hudson.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's why we are bringing.
We told you.
Yeah.
A perfect combination of photography, art, and science.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I think.
So when's the next one?
PT. Next
When's
one
the
is next Sunday. Next Sunday we are planning. I will be updating what it is and who is doing it. So we'll see.
Great. It's good that it's weekly.
We are expecting. If you are not busy, you can also join accordingly.
Everybody.
I will be in Canada, so I will join you from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, PT.
Thank you.
At least we have started this again. Let's try to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay. Thank you.
All
Thank you, everyone. So see you next week. Take care.